Hope my hair doesn't look too weird.
Let me see. Oh, it looks excellent.
Good.
How about mine?
It's all right.
Things that guys never think of on their podcasts. Probably.
We still need a title.
What was the idea that you had?
I like first draft films because that can be like all encompassing. It can be just whatever we want to talk about, but like, you know, we're always going to bring it back to like films and stuff.
But not always first drafts.
Well, no, that's just the catchy title because I feel like what we're doing is a first draft.
And what was the little addendum to it?
First draft films from indie to Hollywood. Predicting our future.
But do we want to end in Hollywood?
Hell no.
So why would we say that we did?
It's less about like us ending up there and more of us taking over there.
I
Like,
just want to keep it here.
what are they doing wrong? What are they doing right? What can we learn from them?
Sure, let's keep it. If this podcast ends up changing names every single episode, we'll just have to stick with one and everybody watching can laugh at us
Yeah.
and our lack of planning. And you will be fully justified in so doing.
Yeah.
So speaking of, where is here when I say I would want to keep it here?
Here is the interesting city of Yakima.
Yakima has about 90,000 people. It's the biggest city in the area.
I actually did not know how many people it had.
We are around 100 feet above sea level. We are a desert. We do have rivers. That
Sorry,
come to
only
us.
100? Do you mean 1,000?
I don't think so. Let's look it up.
I always thought we were way higher than sea level.
Well, I figured this out when I visited family in Meridian, and I was like, why are, you know how when you go camping and stuff, and all your lotion bottles are like, all the lotion and like, or like your sunscreen bottles are, when you open them up, they want to explode because of
What?
the air pressure change?
I've
I noticed
never
in
had that
Meridian.
happen.
That happens all the time to me. Like screw
Oh my
bottles, when you
gosh.
open them, it's because of the air, the elevation, and it messes with it in a weird way.
Maybe Meridian's just really high.
Well, it's a lot higher than I expected for some reason. I do know the Wi-Fi password here. Or you could just look it up.
I feel like this isn't the best use of our time, but I'm going to do it anyway.
That's fair.
Say your favorite thing about Yakima while I look this up.
My favorite thing about Yakima is the community and the people. And this will go regardless of even people who don't know each other. Everybody who I know says, oh, you're right.
What?
Yeah, and
It's
sorry.
1,000 feet.
Yeah, Brooke was right. I was very wrong.
I used to study GPS when I traveled. I had this little like yellow GPS thing that I got for my like 12th birthday. And like my mom would be driving and I'd just be like watching it and watching the elevation change. Tieton is approximately 1,800 feet. 18.
Nice.
Yeah, 1,800.
I wonder where they're measuring the elevation gain from in Yakima. Because 1066 is very specific. I don't know why I didn't remember 1066, because that's the year that William the Conqueror took over England, which I should have remembered, because that's a very big date.
That's a very weird date to remember.
I remember weird things. What can I say?
I mean, I guess I do too. I remembered the elevation of Yakima.
You did. Man, this is interesting.
So many people are going to want to listen to us talk
So
about the
many
elevation
people.
of some
Jeez.
random central
Some
Washington
random town.
So your favorite thing about Yakima?
My favorite thing about Yakima is the people. And this goes for people who don't even know each other, people who do know each other, the family that I have here, and most of my family now lives in Yakima. The people and the community and the tightness of the relationships and the quality of people that you meet here. And this may be just me talking because I've never lived anywhere else. But it's not just me, because people who are not me, who have lived in other places, will say the same thing. And something keeps calling them back. And a lot of people I do know who they grow up here and they hate it and they think it's so boring, and then they just are itching to get out and go see the world and go to the city or go somewhere. And then they miss something. They miss the community, they miss their relationships, and they come back.
There's something weirdly magical about Yakima.
Yeah.
And it is more than just the people. It's more than any one thing, really.
That's true.
I could not pinpoint it if you asked. My whole life, I wanted to be involved in films and stuff. And And I always imagined, I'd move to LA or something.
Yeah, me too.
And
originally.
that, thankfully, that never happened. Something was just telling me to stay. And I think it was more than, God's plan for me meeting you. I think there's something more than that too. There's something that keeps us here now as filmmakers. There's something that keeps all these other indie filmmakers in Yakima. Maybe it's lack of money, but to move anywhere else.
It may have something to do with that.
Maybe a little bit, but no, there's some kind of magic in Yakima that is constantly overshadowed by its stupid crime rates,
And we're not going to talk about that because that's all everybody else talks about. And there's so many more things worth their time to talk about. So if you want to hear about gangs and drugs and human trafficking, go to somebody else's podcast.
Yeah. Or another episode of ours. True crime,
Maybe.
Grannon style.
I don't like true crime. I don't. That's one of those things that I'm going to say I don't understand what's the point of it. And then you and Vanessa are going to disagree with me.
I don't know. I used to watch a lot of those things. I didn't really get a lot out of them.
Fair. So as far as geography, Yakima, it's a desert. We're in a little valley. It's a desert, but not like a sand dune desert with cactuses like people typically think of.
But we do have sand dunes and cactuses.
True, but that's not the predominant point of the landscape. I'd say the biggest thing about the landscape is sagebrush.
Mm-hmm. It's almost closer to a plains, but it's still by definition a desert. Which a lot of people...
I think shrub steppe is the scientific term for...
Interesting, I never heard of that.
Is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you see if you look at like... If you go to a ranger's booth or something and they have pamphlets about climate, it's shrub steppe.
Cool.
Which doesn't mean anything unless you've been there.
Yeah. But also, like, really close to all this desert, plains, shrub steppe is like... major rivers like the Columbia and
less than an hour away.
Oh my gosh, the most beautiful forests. I don't care what anyone tells me. The Cascades are the most beautiful mountain range in America. I swear, it's amazing.
They have a huge amount of variety too. And growing up from my house, I could see both Mount Adams and Mount Rainier because we were facing the west. We had a big, huge picture window facing the Cascades, and we could see the storms rolling in all the time. It was just stunning.
That's
and Mount
amazing.
Clemens, which is there's this relatively big landmark called Mount Clemens, or Clemens Mountain if you read the map. It's Mount Clemens. We could see that too, and I remember when it burned a few years ago, just looking at that and just feeling like part of like my orientation to the world had kind of crumbled because I'd never seen the mountain look so different. But there's also a lot of agriculture around here. That's probably it is the biggest export of Yakima is apples. I don't care what people from Wenatchee say. Yakima is actually the apple capital, and my dad can attest to it because he's lived in both places and worked in both places. So,
well, just by pure numbers alone, Yakima does have the most... I don't know how to phrase that exactly, but yeah, they export the most apples. At one point, it was of the entire world, but it's at least of this area, and I believe the nation, at least.
Yeah, I've heard up to 50%. From either nation or worldwide.
Yeah, I've heard Japan gets fresher apples than we do. Unless, of course, you own an orchard, but...
Yeah.
Growing
up, I was the apple snob because my grandparents would call us the apple snobs. My dad, Fieldman, works at one of the biggest packing companies in the area. So like, always bringing home apples from the orchard picked that day that he picked himself. It was awesome.
There's nothing better. Grocery store apples taste like nothing.
Yeah. Okay, here's a fun fact. Because of my apple snobness, I know this. Don't buy Red Delicious. That's what everybody thinks is a classic apple shape. They used to be really good back in the day. I don't even know when. But because of the way they were bred to have this certain look and all this stuff, the skin got super thick and they got this like classic apple shape. And they got mushy on the inside. So they're not really good anymore. Which is really sad because apparently... Before my time, they used to actually taste good. Don't get them. Get something like a Honey Crisp or a Fuji.
Or a Cosmic Crisp.
Or
those
Pinata
are the
or
best.
a Cosmic Crisp. Or Gala. Or Pink Lady.
All of those are good. Jonagolds, also worth mentioning.
Yes. But don't try to make applesauce with Galas because they are so hard they will not cook down.
Okay, I feel like we're getting a little off topic now.
This is now the Apple Podcast.
Okay.
Call it the off-topic podcast.
Yes, that's brilliant, actually.
Instead of hot topic, it's off-topic. And that's just...
We can open a little store in the mall, sell
merch,
the most random stuff.
But the common thread, we'll find a way to put our logo on it somewhere, even if
everything is orange. That is the common thread.
No.
Let's tell everyone about how we're going to utilize the landscape of Yakima and the surrounding areas in our upcoming sci-fi show, 29 Trouble.
Yes.
Shameless plug there.
If you want to get a sneak peek of that, go watch Tatooine Trouble, which was the instigator for everything. And you can see the desert. And it was supposed to be Tatooine at that time, but now we're playing to the area's strengths, and it is its own planet now. It is Planet 29, Fasach.
Meaning desert in Gaelic?
They don't need to know that, but yes, Planet Fasach, known as Trouble because of how terrible everything goes on it and how most of the galaxy doesn't pay attention to it because, it's just full of gangs and drugs.
Well, now you're giving away all the secrets.
No, just some of them.
So what are some of the locations around Central Washington that we plan on using in this show?
There are so many places right around the edge of Yakima. The place we filmed the original short film of Tatooine Trouble is one. You can just drive up into the hills and see cool vistas, and I still need to take you up there, by the way.
Yeah.
And just backdrops of just hills, and there's a place that we went to just the other night really close to where I grew up. We just parked the car on a side road and went trekking on up this giant hill in the middle of it wasn't the middle of the night. It was super dark.
It was very dark.
It was very dark.
And cold.
A little further away, about near the Hanford Reach, which is, Hanford, the Manhattan Project, where they made bombs back in the day. They're across the river from a point in that, there's these massively huge sand dunes that are super tall, and they're just right there by the Columbia. And they look like something out of the Sahara Desert, just right in the middle of Washington, right by this big old river. And we want to film there, too, for some more deserty, like extra deserty, if that makes sense.
Well, I mean, we have this whole desert planet, but
it doesn't look the same everywhere.
No, Earth doesn't look the same everywhere. I mean, whoever heard of a planet that looks exactly the same everywhere?
Sorry,
Tatooine.
Star Wars.
Yeah, so we want to branch away from the stereotype of A, desert planet, and B, just everything that sci-fi does. It's like we imagine all of this fancy technology, other worlds, alien species, but we can't somehow imagine that they're at all like us and our home planet with all its diverse richness. That's something we want to bring to the sci-fi genre.
And specifically tying it back to Yakima, from a perspective of a big budget filmmaker, it is hard to film in Washington because I don't even know why entirely. Just like state restrictions or something like
Money and tax reasons, basically.
So Washington has massively gone underutilized because of that. I think the biggest thing that was filmed here recently was Twilight. Well, not recently, but that's one that everybody knows was filmed here. I know there's this other cool place on the west side that is an old nuclear plant that they didn't...
Satsop?
Satsop, yes. Yeah. Satsop nuclear plant that they used to be able to rent out as a film set, and they're no longer doing that, unfortunately. But I know they filmed Transformers there, and they filmed some other cool things. But...
Worth noting when speaking of Washington and films, they recently announced, within the last few months, this, I forget the exact amount, something like $15 million in tax incentives to bring films to Washington.
Yes, for industry.
Yeah. So we, Granin Films and the other indie filmmakers around here are, establishing ourselves at the perfect time because Washington in general is going to blow up in the next few years for filming. So we are here at the right time.
As far as other locations, we filmed in our friends' basements.
Technically, we're doing that now.
Yeah.
I think it's worth noting the all the historical forts. That's the word. Forts around Washington. There's a whole bunch of Lewis and Clark trails around here, and oh my gosh, my favorite part, honestly, of living in Washington is all the Native American heritage. I have a tiny bit of Cherokee in my ancestry, and not that really means anything nowadays, but I don't know. I really like seeing all of the cultures, especially around Yakima. And we have the Yakima tribe, very prominent in the Lower Valley. Well, I haven't been to the museum recently, but I was going to say it's a very nice museum. I went there when I was a kid. We had some really delicious fry bread. I was in 3rd grade.
Nice.
Yeah, so we have all of that. The Lewis and Clark trails I mentioned, just all kinds of natural, historical things that are just so cool to learn about and visit, things I want to film at, like the forts I just mentioned, military forts over in the Puget Sound area.
And even more locally, there's Fort Simcoe, which is farther away than you would think. It's like an hour or more to get there, just because that valley just goes on and on, man.
Practically at the base of the mountains.
And that, for those who don't know, is an 1850s era fort that never withstood a fight or a war, from what I understand, but it was there.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was in Yakima. Yeah, so there's a ton of stuff really close to here, to Yakima, within just a few hours even. You know, we have the ocean just a couple hours away. We've got Idaho, Columbia.
Columbia is just, there's so much even just there.
Oregon's great.
Yeah.
Eastern Oregon, also severely underutilized.
Very desert. Very deserty.
A lot like Eastern Washington. Speaking of Oregon, we have some friends down there.
We also have friends here.
But they're not as cool. I'm kidding.
Wow. Okay.
Very much kidding. Yeah, the whole indie scene in the Pacific Northwest, but also in Yakima specifically, that could be an entire podcast of its own.
And some of them have made podcasts.
Yeah, a lot of them have. We'll link them somewhere in here. I don't know where this is.
Or up here.
Up there.
You know.
The local filmmakers in Yakima.
How did we meet them? Let's start there.
Oh, man.
Well, you met them
first.
Who
to choose?
Who did you meet first?
Okay, well, first I met Nathan.
Nathan Cash.
I met him at YVC. Actually, I met his dad first.
This is Yakima Valley College, for those of you
Yakima Valley College.
Know what that means.
In the theater. We were both working in the theater, Nathan's dad and I. Eventually, Nathan came on board too, and he was fantastic. He joined the improv group that I was a part of. We made a whole big group of friends, and it was really nice. We since split with those friends, and Nathan and I are making movies now. Through Nathan, I met Caleb Robinson and Gage Clift on the set of Not So Amazing, which you can watch on YouTube.
Yes.
Fantastic movie. I did the makeup for it. Fun fact, I'm a professional makeup artist, on top of everything else.
She really does everything. It's kind of mind-boggling.
Oh my gosh.
It's true.
It's exhausting. So, Caleb and Gage, fantastic filmmakers. Kyle Roy is amazingly talented. He just released Suck, a vampire...
A short vampire comedy, horror comedy flick. Although saying flick makes it sound like cheap and dumb, which is not.
It's very much not.
I genuinely think that Suck is the most beautiful indie film I have ever seen. Every single shot, every single aspect of that film is immaculate.
Yeah.
And we were there for a lot of the filming of it. Brooke is credited as a producer, actually, and I was an extra, and Brooke was an extra too. And she did the makeup for that as well. Yeah,
really fun working on that set too. Watching Alex Knight and Trevor Jansen work with Kyle Roy, and just to create those beautiful shots. It taught me a lot just watching them.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of fun. So I met all of them on the set of Not So through Nathan, and man, it's just spiraled ever since.
Spiraled in a good way.
I met Kate 2 years ago. And a year and a half ago, shortly after we made Grannon, is that the right way to phrase that?
Incorporated our company?
Yeah. I introduced Kate to Gage and Kyle and Nathan and Caleb.
Yeah.
And
I'll cut in here about my side of the thing. So I had never heard of Gage and Kyle, and Brooke had known them for years. And so one day she's like, hey, these filmmakers want to meet you. I was like, people want to meet me. I feel bad for taking it that way. We went to Northtown Coffee House, and we hung out, and we sat around outside, and I had no idea who they were or anything of what they had done, and we all hit it off immediately, exchanged numbers and all of that. Afterwards, I went home and I watched the movies on the RC channel. I watched Not So Amazing and Seventh and Living with Trevor, Engage's film Vine Avenue, and Waffles, and The Apology.
Oh, yeah.
And so I went and I watched all of those. And then I was like, I feel really terrible now. Not like I'm a bad person, but like, I thought, oh my gosh, I've done so many things, and I really don't think relatively I have. And so by the time I met Nathan, I went a little overboard. I was like, oh my gosh, like, I feel like I'm meeting a celebrity. And I think I kind of embarrassed Nathan unintentionally by like talking about how awesome he was, and he was literally like hiding his head under his shirt. He was like, I'm so bashful right now. So next time I meet a minor celebrity, I probably won't do it that way. Like, meeting Nathan was super fun. And then I believe, when did we all officially meet Caleb too? That was a little bit after the fact.
It was really close to the same
Pretty
time. It
close
was
to
all in
that.
that spring and summer
But yeah.
of 21.
So there's also Michaela, aka Meeks Cerna.
Oh, yeah.
She was somebody I knew from a few years ago, and it turns out she was a filmmaker too. She has been a DP for us for multiple projects.
She's been fantastic. Oh my goodness. Very talented.
I met her through the school I work at years ago. And then we reconnected over a film shoot that the school I work at was working on. And I was like, hey, you make movies, right? And she's like, yeah, I do. So that's how that got started. And we've worked on her. She's a great actress. She's a filmmaker. She doesn't have a channel as far as I know, but I have seen some of the short films she shot in the past, which are excellent. They're just not out there like some of the other filmmakers' work we know of, unfortunately. But I know that it will be at some point, and then the world will know. So yeah, the first project that we were like, let's pull all the people together. So we brought Meeks on board as cinematographer and camera gal, and then we brought Gage Clift on board as DP and camera guy, and that project ended up temporarily falling through, but we kept them for the remainder of the what ended up becoming the Not What We Expected trilogy. After that's the project we worked on with almost everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And we brought Nathan on board that project.
Trevor was in the third one.
Trevor was in the third one, Trevor Jansen. Jesse Youngward, who most people don't know as well. Yeah, he is honestly, I think, the best assistant director we could have ever asked for, especially for Not the Drama We Expected. I just remember like, okay, everybody get over here and shut up. Which is exactly what was needed at the moment.
Yeah.
But he's also a writer and a story developer and has some film school experience that I don't, so from back in the day. But he's also fantastic, and more people need to know Jesse.
Mm-hmm. They will very soon.
Mm-hmm. He's one of our writers for 29 Trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Other writers. Oh yeah, my father-in-law, Ray Hancock.
Oh yeah.
Amazing writer. So he has a very unique story. So most of us are around the same age. It seems like there was something kind of magical about the graduating class of 2017, because multiple of us were all like in that same graduating class, which I think is fantastic and hilarious. So my father-in-law has a unique perspective as somebody who years ago tried the Hollywood route. He and I think he kind of fronted the script, but there were other people involved, and made the rounds, in the late 90s, calling up studios and pitching his story, and he never made it with that script. And I've read the script. It is terrifying and brilliant and amazing. Into the Darkness, I think. Into the Darkness is what it's called?
I think so.
Yeah. And so in a fascinating way, he'd given up, or not given up, but postponed his dreams of being a writer and a screenwriter and a filmmaker and all of that. And then we asked him if he wanted to be a part of 29 Trouble, and he just jumped at the chance because he was like, sci-fi, that's just amazing. I never knew I'd end up working for my future daughter-in-law. So that's how he came on board with that, and we are super excited to showcase his amazing work with that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Paula Hine. Probably best known to the filmmakers as the sound tech or sound mixer for the Not What We Expected series, the second two in particular. But she is a brilliant soul. She has also been to film school, and she studied, in particular, writing and screenwriting and storytelling. And she has a number of really excellent short scripts that I've read that we haven't produced yet, but I know we will be at some point, very soon. And she is just a wealth of bigger picture perspective on storytelling, what makes a good story, and pitfalls to avoid, and has generously looked over a lot of our things and given her feedback, which has been greatly appreciated.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. One thing I feel that often gets overlooked is like an outsider's perspective. Mm-hmm. You can write or create whatever you want, but when you're going to submit it to the public, it's really valuable to have someone else who doesn't know anything about what you're doing come in, look at it, and then tell you all their opinions, good and bad, because then you kind of know, A, if you want to make any changes to it, or B, just what to expect from the people who will be watching it. I feel like there's a lot more people that we haven't mentioned.
You kept bringing up the Doomed prematurely.
Sorry. I'm a little excited. They're not my favorite or anything. They're just cool.
Yeah. Doom Productions in Portland. Not Yakima, but sort of neck of the woods. PNW.
Mm-hmm.
So
close enough.
3 hours away.
Yeah.
Not that far, ultimately.
Mm-hmm.
Closer than parts of Washington.
Yeah. They do a lot of cool content on their YouTube channel. There are 3 of them now.
Yes.
Ethan
Hansen.
Jordan
Ross.
And Zach
Hendricks.
I'm not forgetting about you people. I'm just bad with names.
That's why she has me.
All 3 of them individually are very talented, but also together as the Doomed Productions, oh man, the work that they produce is really good. I very much enjoy watching it, and I also don't always enjoy watching indie films. Secret. Spoiler alert.
How we met the Doom guys was we knew I'd been listening to their podcast for a while, and then we happened to be in Portland because of an event my husband was going to, a martial arts competition. And so we're like, hey, we'll wonder. So a couple weeks before, we just DM'd them. It was just one of those DMs, you know, that like the rest was history. Like, hey, can we meet up with you guys? Like, you live in Portland and we'd really like to meet you. And so they were like, yeah, let's do it. And so at the time, we didn't meet Zach at that time, but we've hung out with them when they came up for Yakima, and that's just, I feel like they belong here. I do think they belong here. I mean, Portland is cool and all that, but like...
This is Kate's nice way of telling you 3 to get up here and stay here.
Yeah. I'm holding out hope for the future, but...
Hey, when we establish Grandin Studios in Yakima, I feel like people will come
flocking. People will at least be visiting a lot, if not moving here, so... Yakima is my favorite place. I will always tell you good things about Yakima. And I don't want to move. I want to bring the good things here and make Yakima even greater than it is. And remove the things that are bad.
I've always hated Yakima. I've always wanted to leave. Till I met Kate. And now I kind of have to stay. But no, I wouldn't have it any other way. Yakima, despite all of its flaws, can be pretty cool. There's a lot of cool people here. Like all the people we just spent half an hour naming.
Yep.
They're all really cool. I just really look forward to like working with all of them in the future and transforming Yakima into what it should be, which is a really great city with a film studio.
Yes.
But I think that about wraps it up for
I think so.
What is Yakima?
Yeah, what is Yakima? Listen to this and find out, which hopefully you already did.
That'd be weird if you skipped to the end.
Yeah, don't do that. That would be really weird.
Who does that?
I hope nobody. I don't know.
Well, until next time, folks. That sounded so much like, I don't know, my grandparents or something.
Have a wonderful rest of your time of day. Whatever that may be.
Thanks for watching.
Yes.
Like and subscribe or whatever you do on this platform.
There's going to be multiple platforms.
Do all the things.
All the
things. Share this.
All the things
if you like
all the time.
all the things all the time.
Yeah. All right, folks. Take care.